a bit later. And from the Phasecraft team, we welcome Dr. Stasja Stanisic, who undertook a PhD within the Quantum Engineering Centre for Doctoral Training at the University of Bristol. He's now a quantum software researcher at Phasecraft. Phasecraft are developing the fundamental quantum theory and software that will enable quantum computers to investigate many things such as novel quantum materials and optimizing key industrial processes. So please, Stasja, if you're ready, then take it away.
Thank you, Reese. Thank you for the lovely introduction. Right, let me just share my screen. Hopefully this works. Well, just a sec. Can people see this?
Yeah, I can see it. So.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. So yeah, as Reese mentioned, I work for Phasecraft. I'm one of the quantum software researchers on the team. I've been with Phasecraft for about 2 years now. Before we start talking about Phasecraft, I just want to get a little bit into motivation of why we do what we do, basically. So quantum computing, why are we interested? Where does it come from? What's the motivation here? You might have heard about this quite a bit over the last 3 days anyways, but I'll just explain a little bit of Phasecraft's motivation for it. So first off, computing itself is essential in the world today for a variety of technological, scientific, engineering problems. The resources we need are keep increasing. Daily, some of these problems are being solved on supercomputers. We need huge amount of computational resources to solve some of these problems, and some are even kind of as simple problems as scheduling, but they're actually very computationally complex. And then I mentioned a few other fields that are of interest for computational scientists or just generally computationally. So as I mentioned, we kind of keep pushing to the edge of what we can do with all of these things. And then there's kind of this idea of like, well, okay, great. What else can we do though? What can we do to bring some more computational force into the situation? And that's kind of where the idea of adding the quantum chip into the mix comes from, really. And this could be anything from having a whole quantum algorithm that you work on the quantum chip, or you could have some quantum subroutines that you just boost your classical algorithms with, and then maybe you offload some of the really difficult computational problems on it. So specifically in one of the areas, the materials, I want to mention a little bit more some of the sub questions that we might have, such as modeling superconductivity or battery materials, solar cells. And these are the kinds of things that Phasecraft has been working on quite a bit in the last couple of years. That doesn't mean we're not interested in all the other questions. We are generally interested in anything that can have practical meaning in the next couple of years, let's say. But these are the problems that we've been focusing on quite a bit. And specifically, I want to mention the Fermi hybrid model because I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end, and specifically our work on it. But Fermi hybrid model is fairly famous. If you're not acquainted with it, it's actually fairly simple to write down, but actually fairly hard to solve. I give here an example of how long it takes on a classical supercomputer to do a fairly small instance of it. And Fermi hybrid model is kind of an entry-level materials modeling. So, okay, great. I've mentioned quantum computing is maybe a way to fix all our problems, but we're talking about fixing all of our problems in 50 years' time, right? No. So actually, it turns out that quantum computing has made huge strides in the last decade or so. And most importantly, we've actually hit a major milestone, which is Google's quantum processor has managed to do a toy problem, a very specifically modeled toy problem on their computer much faster than a supercomputer would do. For comparison, they took about 200 seconds on their chip, while the estimate for how long the supercomputer would be running is something on the order of 10,000 years. So great, that means we can do something useful, or we can do something on the quantum chip that we can't do on a classical chip. Does that mean we can do something practically useful though? Because this is a very specifically designed toy problem. Well, The Google Sycamore chip that was part of this toy problem was had about 53 qubits and took about 20 time steps to do it. Something like modeling nitrogen fixation algorithm needs about 10 to the 9th qubits and 10 to the 15th time steps. Quite a bit of a gap in there, right? But that doesn't mean all is lost, right? That doesn't mean, okay, we should just pack this up for the next 20 years. Actually, this gap is very exciting to us. And this is exactly where Phasecraft lies. What can we do to problems like this that require a lot of quantum resources to either maybe rephrase the problem, maybe find a part of it that's specifically quantum that we can do on the quantum chip, but then keep the classical computing resources. Maybe we can do some smaller problems that are still practically interesting. There's a variety of questions there of what can we do with the device we have now, the devices that we have access to in the next couple of years that lie in this gap that are practically interesting. So that's Phasecraft's mission, I guess, getting the most out of near-term quantum computers. Phasecraft itself was founded by Toby Cubitt, Ashi Montanaro, and John Martin. And these are world-leading experts in quantum computing that have over 50 years of combined experience in it. So we're in good hands academically, that's for sure. Funding-wise, we have secured some venture funding. We closed our seed round end of 2020, so we're well funded. And I'll also talk about this a little bit in a little bit, but we do have some government grants as well. So funding-wise, we're in a really good place and keen to hire. I want to mention at least a part of our team. So we have a team of about 17 people based in Bristol and London. This is a very kind of academically diverse team. We have everything from mathematicians and computer scientists on one side, all the way down to kind of more practical physicists, like condensed matter and material science physicists. They have a range of scientific backgrounds. Pretty much everyone you see here is either a PhD student or has a PhD in kind of quantum-based topic, but that's not the only skill sets that we're looking for. So we are generally interested in hearing from many applicants with strong scientific backgrounds. Specifically, I work in Bristol Office, so I wanted to mention that a little bit further, just for any of those that are interested. We're based in the Quantum Technology Innovation Center. You might have heard about QTech over these past couple of days. It's a really great place to be. There's a few quantum technology startups there, so it means you can kind of network and socialize with people that maybe don't work quite on the same problem that you do, but it's kind of this part of a similar kind of tech bubble that you can have quite interesting conversations with, and maybe even interesting brainstorming with. So that's really great. And also, if you're interested in maybe having a chat with us, please feel free to email me, and maybe we can have a look around the office, and we can talk a little bit more about what it is that we do on the day-to-day basis. So feel free to reach out, please. So I'd like to mention a little bit of our press coverage. We've been covered by a variety of press sources, which is really great. So I'll list here a few: for the Fortune, APS Physics, New Statesman. It's really great to be able to share about our research. We're quite proud that when it gets mentioned and distinguished. It's just great to be noticed and talked about. And then I'd also like to talk a little bit about R&D collaborations. So as I mentioned before, we are venture funded. We have venture funding, but we also have governmental grants, such as our Innovate UK grants. And we're as part of those grants, we're part of multi-year projects in international consortiums. I list 3 projects that we're currently part of, that we're either co-leading or part of. The 3 kind of areas listed there could be summarized as kind of the noise, modeling, error mitigation, all the way down to applications on chip. The quantum computing for the batteries of tomorrow is interested in batteries modeling. It's a very end user case scenario type thing. And it's great because you're working on something very practical. And then there's the quantum computing platform from NISC era commercial applications. And here one of the partners is Rigetti. We're actually bringing a Rigetti quantum computer to the UK by probably end of this year, maybe early next year, which we're really excited about. This will be the largest commercially available quantum computer. That's going to be on par of what you have access to today on Rigetti. So that's very exciting for the UK, I think. Through these projects, we have a range of academic and industry collaborations, which is also great. So, and then we also partner, so we were a software company, a quantum software company, and I think without partnering with quantum hardware companies that you can actually kind of implement your ideas on, you wouldn't be getting very far. So we partner with Rigetti, Google, and IBM, for example. So if you work with us and you're interested in implementing things on these devices, you would have a chance to do that through us. Yeah, so if you're interested in our research, I put some archive links here to some of our more recent papers. As you can see, we're pretty active. We do file for patents. We are a startup, we are a company, so we are interested in patents. We do file for patents, but we do also tend to submit preprints after filing for patents. And so if you are kind of undecided between industry and academia, I think you kind of get the best of both worlds in this situation, because you can kind of keep your academic CV up to date with all your publications. And we are keen to engage with the academia. We don't want to be too closed off and break those links. And while we're on the topic of research, I'd like to kind of go back to the Fermi hybrid model and point out what I found interesting about, for example, working on this, especially because it kind of shows the full cycle of a project that you might be working on. If you were working with us, like, you might find yourself working on a full cycle kind of like this, but you might also find yourself working on a specific area depending on what your interests are. So maybe if you're interested just in error mitigation, maybe that's the only thing that you'll be working on, and that's completely fine. Some people work on the full cycle, some people do not. That's fine. So when it comes to the Fermi hybrid model specifically, so what you can imagine doing is you have this kind of initial problem definition, you take your model, you think about the types of algorithms that you could apply on it, and then you do a lot of theoretical numerical work, lots of simulations, trying to find both quantum and classical algorithms that can kind of cooperate together to bring the best possible performance. You work a lot on optimizing those. So you even from the theoretical perspective, where you imagine you have the most perfect device, you work on a lot of optimization of that algorithm. And as far as Fermi hybrid goes, we have published a paper on this topic specifically. So it's the largest kind of simulation of VQE of variational quantum eigensolver for Fermi hybrid, and we've reduced some complexity considerations we had. So that's kind of interesting. That's the first one here, if you're interested in finding out more about that. Then you might take that algorithm that you kind of worked on and simulated the hell out of, and you'll then think about how you implement it in the hardware. So this will be anything from mapping on that hardware architecture, that gate set. You'll do lots of optimization because now you have a completely new set of problems. So while this would kind of fall more on the kind of theory side and simulations, this might fall more on the engineering side, having engineering focus. And once you're kind of happy that you've gotten to a decent size, that your data is looking like something you would expect and so on, you might want to proceed to the next step. And I'll come back to that in a second, but I also just want to mention that when it comes to Fermi hybrid model, again, we have a kind of the first successful implementation of Fermi hybrid model with variational quantum eigensolver on a Rigetti device in this case. So this is the link here from 2020, June 2020. And then, so yeah, what you might do next after you're kind of happy that you've implemented that to some kind of good standard is you might think about how you could take it even a step further. So you'll think about adding error mitigation and error correction. And this would be a mix of theoretical and experimental work. So you'll think about either maybe developing your error mitigation algorithms, or you might be thinking about how the existing ones apply to your work. So and then you'll want to do some experimental evaluation of those algorithms and kind of rinse, repeat until you found error mitigation strategy that works really well for your algorithm and for the hardware that you're working on. And again, here we developed a new algorithm that made massive improvements for Fermi hybrid model, but actually works generally for fermionic systems. And this is the last link here. Right, and then once you kind of squeezed everything, almost everything you possibly could imagine, you might think about expanding your problem. So you might want to extend your model. You might want to add some new things to your model. You might want to think about new observables instead of, for example, maybe you were measuring energy of the system before. Maybe you want to do some other observables, some other more interesting observables. They might be motivated by end users and what they tend to want to see and hear about. You might want to think about making it maybe even larger scale. Maybe you didn't squeeze out everything from the hardware in the terms of qubits that they have. So you might want to think about maybe the larger sizes of the problem. Or you could take it a step further. So for example, for Fermi hybrid, because we have this end user use case where we're thinking about battery modeling, maybe you want to link up those two and see how you can start modeling those materials based on what you'll be in Fermi hybrid. And that kind of feeds back to the beginning, and now you're working again from scratch in a way, but not really, with this kind of new, more complex problem. Yeah, so finally what I want to say is we need you. If you're interested, if anything I've said has been of interest for you, then please do get in touch. There's a permalink on our website for hiring, or there's the email address that we're always looking for new applicants, specifically for the quantum software researcher role, which is kind of a postdoc level role. But we also do have openings for quantum software interns, or also, so quantum software interns usually are PhD level, but we have taken on undergrads before, so please do get in touch if of interest. And then also funded sponsored PhD students. So we're hiring kind of like on the whole spectrum there. So if anything tickled your imagination, drop us your CV. We're always happy to chat. And yeah, we'll be on the networking session in a little bit as well. But yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Stasja. That was great. Covered a lot of stuff there. So I'm just going to pop over to the Q&A. So there's a question asking, do Phasecraft intend to collaborate with UK-based quantum computing hardware companies?
So that's a bit of a tricky question. I think if it's a well-motivated project, we're not close to any kind of collaboration. But yeah, I can't really comment much further than that. Yeah,
of course. So someone else has commented, I guess they saw the talk from Lana at the beginning of the event, and they've asked if Phasecraft is interested to fund their own PhD students, whether these are typically done through CDT scholarships, for example.
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Yeah, sorry. So so someone mentioned that they saw Lana's talk on doing a PhD with industry, and I guess their question is, do Phasecraft fund their own PhD students, or is funding derived through a CDT scholarship, for example?
Right, so the only ones we have at the moment is through CDT scholarships. Again, I think you drop us your CV, explain us your situation, but yeah. I would say, because usually the PhD students that we have, they are maybe partially funded by us as well. Yeah, so if you drop us your CV, that's the easiest way to.
Yeah, case by case basis, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So Kyle's asked, could you provide, I guess this kind of feeds in more to the internship side. So just asking for details. So is there a typical, hiring cutoff times, deadlines, and how long is a typical internship placement?
Yeah, so we often have, especially for the internships, we often have a deadline around February, March time, as that kind of syncs up with kind of the summer holiday type internships. But we are also having kind of rolling intern applications open, which means if, for example, you're a PhD student, then you can take your break whenever during the year, then then we would be interested in doing that as well. So it doesn't have to be over the summer period. And as far as the kind of the length of those internships, again, that depends also a little bit on case-by-case basis. We've had internships that are only 6 weeks. We're having some interns over the summer now that are 3 months. It depends on your personal situation. It depends on whether you're, for example, international and we want to sponsor your visa to come to the UK for the summer, for example, and things like that. So,
yeah, of course. So I think those are all the questions we've got in the Q&A for now, and I guess we're right on time for the end of this session. So if there's any more questions, Stasja, I guess you're hopefully on the Slack, and you'll be around in the working session as well later.
I'll be checking the Slack, and please come to the networking session.
Great, yeah, so we can catch up there. So yeah, thanks again, Stasja. That's great. Thanks.